She saved a Lakota boy, and years later he returned as chief to make her his wife. The wind moved slowly across the open land, bending the tall grass and soft waves that stretched as far as the eye could see. A small settlement sat near the edge of the plains, with wooden homes, a dusty road, and a river that curved gently nearby. Life there was simple but not always easy. People worked hard every day, and most of them kept to themselves. They did not trust outsiders easily because the world around them felt uncertain. Stories of danger and misunderstanding traveled quickly, and fear often grew where people did not know one another. In one of the small houses lived a young woman named Eliza. She was known in the settlement for her quiet nature and kind heart. She helped her family with cooking, cleaning, and caring for the garden behind their home. When travelers passed through, she often offered water or a warm meal. Some people thought she was too trusting, but Eliza believed that kindness could change even the hardest moments. She did not speak loudly or try to stand out. Instead, she listened more than she talked and noticed small things others ignored. One evening, dark clouds gathered over the plains. The air felt heavy, and the wind began to rise. Soon a strong storm swept across the land. Rain fell in sharp drops, and thunder rolled across the sky. The settlement grew quiet as families stayed inside their homes. Eliza helped her mother close the shutters and secure the door. She lit a small lamp and watched the storm from the window, feeling both worried and calm at the same time. Storms came and went, but this one felt stronger than usual. After some time, the rain slowed, the wind softened, and the sound of thunder moved farther away. Eliza stepped outside to check the yard. The ground was wet and puddles formed along the path that led toward the river. She pulled her shawl around her shoulders and walked carefully, making sure nothing had been damaged. As she moved closer to the riverbank, she noticed something unusual near a group of rocks. At first, she thought it was an animal hiding from the storm, but when she stepped closer, she realized it was a young boy. He looked tired and frightened. His clothes were wet, and there was a small cut on his arm. He sat very still, as if unsure whether to run or stay. Eliza stopped a few steps away so she would not scare him. She could see that he did not belong to the settlement. His eyes were filled with worry, and he seemed ready to flee at any moment. For a brief second, Eliza felt afraid too. She knew that helping him might cause trouble if others found out. Many people in the settlement were cautious and did not welcome strangers easily. But as she looked at him more closely, she saw not a threat, but a child who needed help. The storm had left him alone and hurt. Without saying anything, she slowly knelt and held out her hand, showing that she meant no harm. The boy watched her carefully. He did not understand her words, but he understood her gentle actions. After a moment of silence, he allowed her to come closer. Eliza guided him to stand and helped him walk toward her home. She moved quietly, hoping no one else would notice. Once inside, she gave him a dry cloth and warm water. He stayed near the doorway at first, unsure if he could trust her. Eliza spoke softly, even though he did not understand her language. Her tone was calm and kind. She cleaned the small cut on his arm and wrapped it with clean fabric. Then she gave him a simple meal and watched as he slowly began to relax. The boy did not say much, but his eyes showed gratitude. He looked around the room with curiosity and caution. Eliza realized that he must have been separated from his people during the storm. She wondered how far he had traveled and how long he had been alone. She knew she could not keep him there forever, but she also could not send him away while he was still weak and frightened. Over the next few days, she helped him recover. She brought him food, water, and a safe place to rest. She kept his presence a secret, worried that others might react with fear instead of understanding. Each day the boy grew stronger. He began to smile more and show signs of trust. They did not share the same language, yet they found ways to communicate through small gestures and expressions. Sometimes he pointed at objects and repeated their names in his own language. Eliza listened and tried to learn. They shared quiet moments that felt simple but meaningful. In the evenings, they would sit near the doorway and watch the sunset paint the sky in soft colors. But The plain stretched endlessly, reminding them both of the world beyond the small house. Eliza often wondered what his life was like and whether his family was searching for him. She could see that he missed them. Sometimes he would look toward the horizon with a distant expression, as if listening for voices carried by the wind. One morning he seemed ready to leave. He stood near the doorway with a determined look. Eliza understood without words that he wanted to find his way back to his people. She felt a mix of relief and sadness. She knew this moment would come, but she had grown used to his quiet presence. Before he left, he reached into a small pouch and took out a simple token. It was not valuable in a material way, but it carried meaning. He placed it in her hand as a sign of gratitude. Then he touched his chest and looked at her as if making a promise he could not fully explain. Eliza walked with him to the edge of the river. The morning light stretched across the plains, and the air felt fresh after the storm that had changed everything. The boy turned once more before leaving. For a moment they simply looked at each other, sharing a silent understanding. And he walked away, moving steadily across the open land until he became a small figure in the distance.
Eliza stood there long after he disappeared.
She felt a strange sense of connection, as if that brief meeting had left a mark on her heart. She did not know his name or where his path would lead. She only knew that helping him had felt right. When she returned home, life continued as before. There were chores to finish, meals to cook, and days to pass. Yet something inside her had changed. She realized that even in a world filled with uncertainty, one act of kindness could create a bond that crossed fear and distance. Years would pass and many things would change in the settlement and beyond. But Eliza would always remember the stormy evening when she found a frightened boy by the river and chose to help him. She did not know that this small act would shape the future in ways she could never imagine. For now, it remained a quiet memory carried in her heart, like a gentle promise waiting for the right time to return. Time moved forward in its steady and quiet way. The storm that once brought a frightened boy to Eliza's door became only a memory, but it never truly faded from her heart. Days turned into months, and months turned into years. Life in the settlement followed its usual rhythm. People worked in the fields, cared for animals, and gathered in the evenings to share news and simple meals. Seasons changed across the plains, bringing warm summers, cool autumns, and cold winters that covered the land in pale frost. Through all of it, Eliza continued her daily routines, growing older and wiser with each passing year. She became known as a reliable and kind young woman. Neighbors often came to her for help or comfort. If someone was ill, she brought warm soup. If a traveler passed through, she offered water and a place to rest. Her gentle nature earned her quiet respect. Some people still believed she was too trusting, but most had come to see her kindness as a strength. She did not seek attention or praise. She simply lived each day with patience and care. Even as time passed, the memory of the boy she had helped remained close to her thoughts. Sometimes, when she walked near the river at sunset, she remembered the stormy evening when she found him. She wondered what had become of him. Had he found his family? Had he grown strong and safe among his people? She had no answers, only questions that floated through her mind like soft echoes from the past. She kept the small token he had given her in a wooden box beside her bed. It was simple, but it carried meaning. Whenever she looked at it, she felt a quiet reminder that even brief moments could shape a person's life. As Eliza grew older, her responsibilities increased. Her parents relied on her more each year. She helped manage the household, tended the garden, and assisted neighbors when they needed extra hands. She learned to handle challenges with calm determination. Hard seasons came and went, but she faced them with steady courage. Through all the changes, she remained thoughtful and observant, always noticing the small details others overlooked. Meanwhile, far from the settlement, the boy she once helped was also growing. He had found his way back to his people after the storm. At first, his return brought relief and joy to his family. They welcomed him with warmth and gratitude, thankful that he had survived his time alone. As he grew older, he carried the memory of the young woman who had cared for him when he was lost. He did not know her language or her world, but he remembered her kindness clearly. It stayed with him like a guiding light during his childhood. He spent his early years learning the traditions of his people. Elders taught him important lessons about respect, courage, and responsibility. He learned to observe the land, understand its changes, and live in balance with nature. He trained with others his age, practicing skills that would help him protect and support his community. He listened carefully to stories shared by the elders, stories that carried wisdom from generations before him. Among those lessons, one stood out in his heart: the idea that kindness should never be forgotten. As the boy grew into a young man, he gained the respect of those around him. He showed patience in difficult moments and fairness when making decisions. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, his words were thoughtful and calm. People noticed that he had a quiet strength about him. He did not act out of pride or anger. Instead, he tried to understand others and find peaceful paths when possible. Though he faced challenges like anyone else, he carried himself with steady confidence. Sometimes when he sat alone near the edge of the plains, he thought about the young woman who had helped him years before. He remembered the warmth of her home, the way she cleaned his wound, and the calm look in her eyes. He had been scared and alone, yet she had offered care without expecting anything in return. That memory shaped the way he saw the world. It reminded him that even in uncertain times, people from different paths could show compassion to one another. Back in the settlement, Eliza's life continued to change as well. She grew into a thoughtful and capable woman. Many people trusted her advice and valued her presence. She became someone who could bring calm to tense situations and comfort to those who felt lost. Though she lived a simple life, her actions had a quiet impact on those around her. She never forgot the importance of small acts of kindness. Sometimes travelers passing through the settlement brought news from distant places. They spoke of changing times, shifting paths, and leaders rising in different communities. Eliza listened with interest, though she rarely asked questions. She wondered how much the world beyond her small town had changed. She wondered if the boy she once helped had grown into a strong and kind person. She hoped he had found peace and belonging. Years continued to pass, and both of their lives moved forward in ways neither of them could fully predict. Though they lived far apart, their memories of that brief meeting remained alive. For Eliza, it was a reminder that compassion could cross any boundary. For the young man, it was a lesson that kindness should be honored and remembered. As he matured, he began to take on more responsibility within his community. Elders noticed his thoughtful nature and trusted him with important tasks. He worked to support his people and protect their way of life. He listened to the wisdom of those older than him and learned to guide those younger. Over time, his calm leadership and fair judgment earned him growing respect. He did not seek power or recognition, but others saw his potential and believed in his ability to lead. Eliza, too, continued to grow in quiet strength. She found purpose in helping others and creating a peaceful home for those around her. She often walked by the river in the early morning or at sunset, enjoying the sound of flowing water and the wide view of the plains. Those moments gave her time to reflect on life and the paths people take. She believed that every act of kindness created a ripple that traveled farther than anyone could see. Neither of them knew that their paths would cross again one day. They lived separate lives, shaped by their own communities and responsibilities. Yet the bond formed years ago remained like a small thread connecting their stories. It did not demand attention or recognition. It simply existed, waiting quietly in the background of their lives. As the seasons continued to change and the years moved forward, both Eliza and the young man carried the lessons of their past into their present. They grew into people guided by respect, patience, and compassion. Though distance and time separated them, the memory of that stormy evening by the river remained alive in both of their hearts. It was a reminder that even the briefest moments could shape a future in ways no one could fully understand. And so, life went on. The plains stretched wide and endless beneath the open sky. The settlement continued its daily routines. The young man's community grew and changed with time. Each of them followed their path, unaware that the quiet promise formed years ago would one day return to the surface, bringing their stories together once more. Many years had passed since the stormy evening when Eliza helped a frightened boy by the river. Life in the settlement had changed slowly over time. Some families moved away, and new ones arrived. Children grew into adults, and adults grew older with each season. The dusty road that ran through the town still carried wagons and travelers, and the river still flowed quietly along its path. Eliza was no longer a young girl. She had become a thoughtful and steady woman, known for her calm voice and helpful nature. She continued to live a simple life, helping her family and neighbors whenever she could. People trusted her judgment because she listened carefully before speaking. When disagreements happened in the settlement, she often helped bring peace. Her days were filled with small tasks, but she found meaning in each one. In quiet moments, she sometimes thought about the boy she had once helped. The memory of his frightened eyes and gentle gratitude never truly left her. She still kept the small token he had given her. Over the years, it had become a reminder that kindness could travel far beyond a single moment. One afternoon, as the sun moved slowly across the sky, a rider arrived with news. He spoke with the town leaders and shared that a group from a nearby Lakota community would soon visit. They wished to meet peacefully and speak about cooperation and understanding. The news spread quickly through the settlement. Some people felt curious, while others felt unsure. Many had never spoken directly with members of that community before. Old stories and worries lingered in people's minds, making them cautious. Still, the leaders agreed that a meeting could bring better understanding. Eliza listened to the conversations around her with quiet interest. She did not speak much about it, but something stirred in her heart. She felt a strange sense of anticipation, though she could not explain why. She told herself that it was only curiosity, yet deep inside a small voice reminded her of the boy she had once helped. She wondered if he was somewhere out there, grown into a man with his own life and responsibilities. The thought felt distant and unlikely, yet it stayed with her. A few days later, the visitors arrived. They traveled with calm purpose and respectful presence. Their leader rode at the front, carrying himself with quiet confidence. He was not loud or proud. Instead, he seemed thoughtful and observant. When they reached the settlement, the town leaders welcomed them with cautious politeness. A gathering was arranged in an open space near the center of the settlement. People from both sides stood at a respectful distance, unsure of what to expect but willing to listen. Eliza stood near the edge of the gathering, watching carefully. She did not want to draw attention to herself. She simply wanted to observe. As she looked toward the visitors, her eyes settled on their leader. Something about him felt familiar, though she could not immediately understand why. He spoke calmly with the town leaders, using simple words and respectful gestures. His presence carried a sense of balance and patience. As the conversation continued, he turned his head slightly and looked out at the gathered crowd. For a brief moment, his eyes met Eliza's. Time seemed to slow. She felt a sudden rush of recognition, though she could not yet be certain. There was something in his expression that reminded her of a frightened boy by the river, a boy who had looked at her with the same careful attention years ago. He, too, seemed to pause when he saw her. His gaze lingered, as if searching through old memories. Then, slowly, understanding appeared on his face. He spoke quietly to one of the people beside him and took a few steps forward. Eliza's heart beat faster as he approached. She felt both nervous and curious, unsure if she was imagining things. When he stood a few steps away, he gave a respectful nod. His eyes were calm, but filled with recognition. Though many years had passed, there was no doubt left in either of their minds. He was the boy she had helped during the storm. Now he stood before her as a grown man and a leader among his people. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Words felt unnecessary. The memory of their first meeting was enough to bridge the silence. Finally, he spoke gently, using simple language that both could understand. He thanked her for the kindness she had shown him long ago. His voice carried warmth and sincerity. Eliza listened with quiet emotion. She felt surprised, relieved, and deeply moved all at once. She told him that she had often wondered what had become of him. Blood. She had hoped he found his family and lived a good life. He smiled softly and shared that he had indeed returned to his people and grown up, surrounded by their care. He explained that he had never forgotten the young woman who helped him when he was lost and afraid. Her kindness had stayed with him and guided him through many moments in his life. Their conversation was simple yet full of meaning. Around them, people watched with curiosity, but also with growing respect. The meeting between the two communities continued, but now there was a new sense of understanding in the air. The leader's calm presence and Eliza's gentle nature seemed to create a quiet bridge between the groups. Over the next few days, the visitors remained in the settlement to continue discussions with the town leaders. During that time, Eliza and the chief spoke several times. They shared stories about their lives and how much had changed since they last met. They laughed softly about how small and uncertain they had been during that stormy evening years ago. They spoke about their families, their responsibilities, and the lessons they had learned over time. Eliza noticed how thoughtful and respectful he had become. He listened carefully before speaking and showed concern for the well-being of his people. He carried himself with steady confidence, yet there was still a trace of the gentle boy she remembered. He in turn saw how Eliza had grown into a strong and compassionate woman. Her kindness had not faded with time. If anything, it had grown deeper. Their conversations felt easy and natural. They did not rush or force anything. They simply shared memories and experiences, finding comfort in the connection that had once brought them together. Though many years had passed, the bond formed during that brief moment of kindness remained strong. As the days went by, people in the settlement began to notice the quiet friendship forming between them. Some were surprised, while others felt hopeful. The presence of understanding between the two seemed to encourage a more peaceful atmosphere. Conversations between the communities became more open and respectful. Small misunderstandings were replaced with patient listening. Eliza found herself thinking about how unexpected this reunion was. She had never imagined that the boy she helped would return one day as a leader. She felt grateful that he had found a good path and grown into someone who valued respect and peace. He too felt grateful for the chance to thank her in person and reconnect after so many years. One evening, as the sun set over the plains, they stood near the river where they had first met. The water flowed quietly, just as it had on that stormy night long ago. They reflected on how much time had passed and how their lives had changed. Yet the simple act of kindness that brought them together remained at the center of their story. Neither of them knew exactly what the future would hold. They only knew that their paths had crossed again, for a reason. The bond formed years ago had returned, stronger and deeper than before. As they stood by the river watching the sky turn soft shades of gold and orange, they both felt a quiet sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought them back together. The days that followed felt calm yet meaningful for everyone in the settlement. The visiting group stayed longer than many had expected, not because of any problem, but because both sides wanted to continue their peaceful talks. People began to feel more comfortable around one another. Where there had once been distance and quiet worry, there was now curiosity and a slow growth of trust. Conversations took place in open spaces, and small smiles replaced guarded looks. Eliza found herself speaking with the chief often. Their talks were never rushed. They spoke during walks near the river, while standing under the wide sky, or while watching the sunset from a quiet hill outside the settlement. Sometimes they spoke about serious matters, such as how their communities could avoid conflict and live with more understanding. Other times they spoke about simple things, like their childhood memories, the beauty of the plains, and the way time changes people. Each conversation brought them closer, not only as individuals, but as two people who wanted the same peaceful future for those around them. Eliza admired his patience and thoughtful way of speaking. He never raised his voice or tried to impress others. He listened carefully and spoke only after considering his words. She could see why his people respected him. He carried responsibility with calm strength, and he cared deeply about the well-being of those he led. The chief also noticed how Eliza treated everyone around her with kindness. He saw how neighbors trusted her and how she offered help without expecting anything in return. He realized that the same gentle spirit he remembered from years ago had grown stronger over time. She had not changed in heart, even though the years had shaped her into a wise and capable woman. One afternoon they sat near the riverbank where they had first met long ago. The water moved slowly, reflecting the sky like a mirror. The air felt peaceful, and the land stretched wide and open around them. They spoke about the past, remembering the storm and the moment their paths first crossed. It felt almost unreal that such a small moment had led to this meeting years later. Both of them felt grateful that life had brought them together again. The chief spoke softly about how he had carried that memory through his life. He explained that when he was a boy, lost and afraid, her kindness had shown him that compassion could exist even between strangers. That lesson stayed with him as he grew older and took on responsibility within his community. He said that her simple act of helping him had shaped the way he tried to lead, with fairness, patience, and respect. Eliza listened with quiet emotion. She had never imagined that her small act of kindness had meant so much. To her, it had felt like the right thing to do in that moment. She had not thought about the future or expected anything in return. Hearing how it had stayed in his heart all these years filled her with a sense of wonder and humility. As the days passed, people in the settlement began to notice the strong understanding between them. Some were surprised, while others felt hopeful. Their connection seemed to represent something larger than just a personal bond. It showed that two people from different worlds could share respect and care. Their conversations became a symbol of what peaceful understanding could look like. Still, Eliza found herself thinking carefully about what this connection might mean for the future. She knew that life often required difficult choices. She had lived in the settlement her entire life. Her family, her home, and her memories were all there. Leaving would not be easy. At the same time, she felt a growing sense that her path might be changing in ways she had never expected. The chief also thought deeply about the future. As a leader, he had many responsibilities. He needed to make choices that honored his people and their traditions. Yet he also felt that the bond he shared with Eliza was important. He respected her not only for what she had done years ago, but for who she had become. He saw in her a partner who valued kindness, patience, and understanding, qualities he believed were essential for building a better future. One evening, as they walked along the edge of the plains, the sky turned soft shades of gold and pink. The wind moved gently through the tall grass. It was a quiet moment, free from noise and worry. The chief spoke carefully, choosing his words with care. He told Eliza that he wished to honor the promise he had carried in his heart for many years. He explained that he did not feel bound by that promise alone. Instead, he spoke from a place of genuine respect and admiration. He said that he wished to ask her to share a future with him. Eliza felt a mix of emotions. She was surprised, moved, and thoughtful all at once. She had sensed that their connection was growing, but hearing his words made everything feel more real. She knew that accepting such a proposal would change her life in a very big way. It would mean leaving the familiar world she had always known and stepping into a new one. It would mean learning new traditions and finding her place among people she was still getting to know. She did not answer right away. Instead, she asked for time to think. The chief understood and respected her need for reflection. He did not pressure her or expect an immediate decision. He simply said that whatever she chose, he would honor her choice and remain grateful for the bond they shared. Over the next few days, Eliza spent time reflecting. She walked along the river, sat quietly in her home, and spoke with her family. She thought about the life she had lived and the path that lay ahead. She considered the meaning of their connection and the possibility of building a future together. She knew that such a decision required courage and trust. Her family listened with care and supported her as she worked through her thoughts. They knew how important kindness and understanding were to her. They also understood that life sometimes called people to unexpected paths. They encouraged her to follow her heart and choose the path that felt right for her. Meanwhile, the chief continued his discussions with the town leaders. He worked to strengthen peaceful relations and create a foundation of trust. He wanted both communities to feel comfortable with any decision that might come. He believed that respect and understanding should guide every step. As the days passed, the atmosphere in the settlement remained calm and thoughtful. People sensed that something meaningful was unfolding. They saw how Eliza and the chief spoke with mutual respect and care. Their connection seemed to bring a sense of hope to those around them. Finally, Eliza reached a place of clarity in her heart. She realized that the bond they shared was built on trust, gratitude, and genuine respect. It was not only about the past, but also about the future they could create together. She understood that stepping into a new life would require courage, but she also believed that it could lead to something meaningful and positive. One evening, as the sun set and the sky filled with soft light, she met the chief near the river. The air felt calm and still. She spoke gently, sharing her thoughts and feelings. She told him that she valued the connection they had built and respected the life he had created. She said that she was willing to step forward with trust and hope. The chief listened with quiet gratitude. He thanked her for her honesty and courage. They both knew that their decision would not only shape their own lives but also influence the relationship between their communities. Together they stood by the river, feeling a sense of calm and purpose.
They understood that their journey was not just about them, but about building a bridge between two worlds.
The days ahead would bring new experiences, challenges, and moments of growth. Yet as they looked toward the horizon, they felt ready to face whatever came next with patience and understanding. The bond formed years ago during a storm had grown into something strong and meaningful. It had traveled through time and distance, bringing them to this moment of shared hope. The morning after Eliza made her decision felt different from any morning before. The sky was clear, and the air carried a calm stillness, as if the land itself understood that something meaningful was about to begin. The settlement woke slowly, just as it always did, with the sound of footsteps on the dusty road and the soft creak of wooden doors opening. Yet beneath the usual routine, there was a quiet sense of change. Eliza stood outside her home and looked toward the open plains. She felt a mix of emotions, excitement, nervousness, and a deep sense of purpose. She knew that the path ahead would not be simple. It would require courage and patience. It would ask her to leave behind familiar surroundings and step into a new life filled with learning and growth. Still, she felt certain that she had made the right choice. The bond she shared with the chief was built on trust, respect, and understanding. It was not rushed or forced. It had grown naturally over time, rooted in a small act of kindness from years ago. The chief also felt a quiet sense of gratitude. He understood the weight of the decision Eliza had made. He respected her courage and her willingness to step into a world different from the one she had always known. He wanted to make sure that her transition would be gentle and supported. He spoke with his people and shared his hopes for the future. They listened carefully and offered their understanding. Many of them already respected Eliza because of the story they had heard about how she helped him when he was a boy. They saw her as someone who valued compassion and fairness. Before anything else, both communities gathered to speak openly about the future. The town leaders and the chief met in a calm and respectful setting. They discussed how they could continue building a peaceful relationship. They wanted to ensure that understanding and cooperation would guide their actions. Eliza's decision became a symbol of that shared hope. It showed that trust could grow between people who once lived in separate worlds. Eliza spent time saying goodbye to the place where she had lived her entire life. She walked through the small garden behind her home, touching the leaves of the plants she had cared for over the years. She visited neighbors who had become like family to her. They wished her well and offered kind words. Some felt sad to see her go, but they also felt proud of her courage. They understood that her journey carried meaning beyond her own life. It represented a step toward greater understanding between communities. She packed only what she needed, keeping her belongings simple. Among them was a small token the chief had given her years ago when he was a frightened boy. She held it for a moment, remembering the stormy night when their paths first crossed. It amazed her how a single moment of kindness could grow into something so important. She placed the token safely among her things, knowing it would always remind her of where their story began. When the day came for her to leave, the sky was bright and clear. People from the settlement gathered to see her off. The chief and his group stood nearby, ready to begin the journey back. There was no loud celebration or grand display. Instead, there was a quiet and respectful farewell. Eliza hugged her family and thanked them for their love and support. They reminded her that she would always have a place in their hearts, no matter where life took her. As she stepped forward to join the chief, she felt both nervous and hopeful. The road ahead stretched wide across the plains, leading to a new home and a new role in life. The chief walked beside her with calm confidence. He reassured her that she would have time to learn and adjust. He did not expect her to change overnight. He only hoped that they would walk forward together with patience and understanding.
The journey across the plains gave them time to talk and reflect.
They spoke about their hopes for the future and the kind of life they wanted to build together. They shared stories from their past and listened to each other's thoughts. Each conversation deepened their connection and helped them understand one another more fully. They knew that differences in culture and tradition would require learning and respect. They were ready to face those challenges together. When they reached the chief's community, Eliza was welcomed with warmth and curiosity. People gathered to greet her, not with suspicion, but with open hearts. They had heard the story of how she once helped the chief when he was a boy. They saw her as someone who valued kindness and courage. She felt nervous at first, unsure of how she would fit into this new world. Yet she also felt encouraged by the gentle welcome she received. In the days that followed, she began to learn about the traditions and daily life of the community. She listened carefully and observed with respect. She did not try to change anything or rush her understanding. Instead, she asked questions and showed appreciation for the knowledge shared with her. People were patient and kind as they helped her learn. Slowly, she began to feel more comfortable and at home. The chief supported her every step of the way. He made sure she never felt alone or overwhelmed. He encouraged her to take her time and trust her own pace. Together, they built a life based on mutual respect and care. Their partnership was not just about personal happiness. It also represented a bridge between two communities that had once lived apart. Through their actions, they showed that understanding and kindness could create lasting connections. As months turned into years, Eliza became an important part of the community. She shared her own skills and knowledge while continuing to learn from those around her. She found joy in simple moments, like watching the sunrise over the plains, or listening to stories shared by elders in the evening. She felt a sense of purpose in helping others and building strong relationships. Back in the settlement she had left behind, people often spoke about her with pride. They remembered her kindness and courage. They also saw how her decision had helped create a stronger bond between the two communities. Visits and conversations became more common. Trade and cooperation grew slowly but steadily. The connection between the groups became a symbol of what was possible when people chose understanding over fear. Eliza and the chief often reflected on how their story began. They never forgot the stormy evening by the river that first brought them together. They knew that if Eliza had chosen fear instead of compassion that night, their paths might never have crossed again. That simple act of kindness had grown into a shared life and a stronger connection between their peoples. Their story was not just about love or destiny. It was about the power of empathy and the importance of treating others with care. It showed that even in uncertain times, small actions could lead to meaningful change. As they stood together years later, watching the sun set across the open land, they felt grateful for the journey that had brought them to that moment. The plains stretched wide beneath the sky, just as they always had. The river flowed quietly, carrying memories of the past and hopes for the future. Eliza and the chief stood side by side, not only as partners in life, but also as symbols of unity and respect. Their journey had begun with a simple act of kindness, and it continued with a shared commitment to understanding and peace.